Shane Goettle, and he's running for U.S. Congress. So, Shane.
Thank you, Anthony. I've been very impressed with Anthony's leadership. Let's give him a hand. Well, good afternoon. I'm Shane Goettle, and I'm seeking the Republican nomination for North Dakota seat in the United States House of Representatives. Let me first of all thank all of you. What a great turnout here today. I want to introduce my wife, Brenda. Brenda, stand up and give a wave. Megan Essison, who's from the Devils Lake area, is working in my campaign. Now, as you evaluate the candidates in the U.S. House race, it seems that not a month goes by that not another one of us jumps in. So it's getting large. We've got a field of 6, and I think it's great that Republicans have competition. There's no competition on the Democrat side, but it's fundamentally what we believe in. And so I think it's wonderful that we're having this spirited competition and debate. And there's a debate on Friday here in Bismarck, and I invite all of you to come to that at the City-County building at 6:30 p.m. The House candidates will debate for about an hour and a half. So that's what's set in store for Friday night. And as you evaluate the candidates in the race, it's certainly important to consider our backgrounds and our qualifications so that you can make an informed choice about who you believe can best represent you in Washington. So let me begin there. I was raised on a small grains and cattle ranch near Stanley, North Dakota. That was homesteaded in 1905, and so it now represents 4 generations of Goettles that have been owning that land and operating it. In fact, I still run some beef cows with my father and my brother, and I keep a hand on the cattle operation. We're also entrepreneurial. My father and brother and I just recently started a gravel company, and so we're selling gravel throughout western North Dakota as well. From 1988 through 1992, I attended North Dakota State University, where I earned a degree in agricultural economics. Then I married my wife, Brenda, and we got married, and she put me through law school. Literally. We then moved to Minot, where I joined the McGee, Hankel, Bacchus, and Dubervony firm. And I focused my commercial practice on business and estate law. I also did securities work. I helped businesses raise capital and set up their management and internal structures so they could succeed. I helped businesses and farms conduct their business and transition planning. And I helped seniors plan their estates and deal with Medicaid and Social Security issues. At the end of 2001, I was invited to become a member of the Bush administration, and I served in several positions in the Bush administration after moving my family out to Washington, D.C. We spent nearly 4 years out there. And by 2004, I had been appointed as the Chief of Staff to the Undersecretary for Rural Development. And I helped manage about 7,200 employees across the country. And that's what I was doing in 2005 when then Governor Hoeven invited me back to provide leadership at what was a relatively new Department of Commerce. And I served there for 5 years, working on energy and infrastructure development and helping our exporters. We promoted entrepreneurism, and we helped build a positive business climate for investment in the state. In 2011, after Senator Hoeven's election, I became his state director, and I ran point on flood issues around our state and continued my work with energy companies and also with farm commodity groups for his work in the Ag Committee on the Farm Bill. So I think you can see from my background that I know economics and law. I have tremendous depth in the 2 industries that are most important in North Dakota, energy and agriculture. And I have a unique mix of experience in both the private and the public sectors at all levels of government. And I also submit that I have a proven track record in bringing competing interests together and working through complex issues and getting results. That's the experience and background I bring to the race. And this race takes place in a bit of a paradox. Economically, our state is doing very well. Our economy is booming, unemployment is low. We have this economic surplus that's also creating lots of opportunities for investment and jobs. And as a state, we're able to fund our priorities. We have robust discussions about tax relief, and we're even setting aside some reserves for the future. And this paradox of North Dakota is happening in a country that faces just the opposite situation. Our national economy is sluggish, and almost 1 in 10 people are out of work. If you're in California, it's 1 out of 12, and people are exiting that state. They're coming here to North Dakota. And our federal government's own policies are causing job creators to hold back. They're reluctant to take risks in the face of overbearing regulations, and all this uncertainty that's coming out of Washington. And Washington itself continues to operate without a budget, and we have out-of-control deficits that are completely unchecked. Our nation is piling up a mountain of debt that is at unprecedented levels, and in fact, our national debt now exceeds our gross domestic product. And think about that for a moment. Our national debt exceeds all the goods and services that our economy produces in the space of a year. That's tragic. That's the situation our country's in. Now, economists suggest that when the national debt reaches 90% of gross domestic product, our economy's in trouble. And when it reaches 130%, it may be too late to pull it back. And the reason for that is the interest rates begin to exponentially expand as a larger and larger share of our overall federal budget. And we spiral out of control because we can't keep up. So what does that mean? It means that we're in a zone right now where we must act. We must act on two fronts. We must get spending under control, and we must do everything possible to grow the economy and create jobs. And that's what my campaign's about. I believe a campaign needs a mission. And so that's the mission that I've charted for my campaign. So you'll hear me talking about controlling spending, capping future growth of that spending, and balancing our federal budget so we can focus on the next challenge, ultimately bringing down that pile of national debt. It's the first step, controlling spending. The other part of my campaign, the other mission, is getting our economy going again. You know, it's easy for some to suggest that to control our budget we ought to raise taxes, but that's the last thing that we should be doing in a stalled economy. We'd be treating the symptom rather than the problem. We're already taxed enough, and raising taxes won't fix our budget goals. The real problem is we have a presidential administration that's holding this economy back, refusing to engage in long-term tax policy, instead engaging in overzealous regulatory efforts that seem designed to tread and stomp on our small businesses rather than lift them up and get them to invest and create jobs. It doesn't have to be this way. In North Dakota, tax revenues have grown this last decade without raising taxes. We can all be very proud of that. It happened because our economy expanded and we created a larger pool of taxpayers. That's what our country needs to do as well. I mentioned the 5 years I spent at the Commerce Department. I had the privilege of chairing and leading the development of comprehensive energy policy that we termed Empower North Dakota. With that policy, we made recommendations to our legislature that helped remove roadblocks and adjust incentives, and we supported our regulatory agencies in a way that made them helpful and act in a spirit of cooperation with business while they did their jobs, of course, in protecting our environment and consumers and health and safety and welfare of our people. They did their jobs, but they did it in a way that's working with business rather than what we see coming out of Washington, the spirit of opposition. In the final months of my term as Commerce Commissioner, we turned our attention to developing an infrastructure plan for western North Dakota. We worked directly with mayors and county commissioners. We engaged the public. We developed a flexible 20-year plan that would help our communities and our state address the roads and the water and the sewer issues and the housing and all the other infrastructure issues that this very, very aggressive oil and gas development is creating for us. The legislature funded that plan at over $1.2 billion. And that plan is now on the streets and underway. And we expanded our trade efforts in North Dakota. We helped our agriculture producers and our manufacturers identify new markets for our crops and our livestock and our equipment. We helped them build the relationships overseas that translated into jobs over here. North Dakota stands as a tremendous example that when we work with and not against job creators do what they do best. They invest in their businesses and they create jobs to meet the demands of the markets they're serving. On my campaign, you'll hear me talking about flattening our tax code. You'll hear me talking about repealing Obamacare. You hear me talking about regulatory reform that begins with the EPA but doesn't end there. You'll hear me talking about a broken budget process that we also need to reform and identify priorities and meet our spending targets as we move into the future. Now, I'm very excited about the campaign. We're on a roll. We're getting out and meeting people, and that's the funnest part of this job, quite frankly. This campaign is about calling people and visiting with all of you on the streets and learning about your issues as well. And I'm really enjoying that piece of it. I really am. It's a lot of fun. Brenda's even getting involved as well, and she'll be making some appearances on my behalf. And I hope you'll see my family and some of my kids as well.